Story 1. The Man in the Sunday Suit. I hadn't been back to Logan County in nearly 10 years, not since my cousin wrecked his truck drunk off his ass and nearly killed me on the same stretch of road I now found myself crawling down again. The occasion: my Aunt Melba's funeral. She died the way you'd expect an old mountain woman to go, quiet, proud, alone in her sleep. I sat through the service surrounded by old cousins and strangers who used to pinch my cheeks and call me Little Darryl. I didn't belong there anymore. I hadn't in a long time. Still, I took the long way home. County Route 12, a narrow, weaving thing that hugged the hills like ivy. It was stupid. I knew that. But I figured one last look at the old hollow wouldn't kill me. The rain started soft, just a mist on the windshield at first, then a steady tapping, then harder. Mountain rain's different. It doesn't fall, it descends. Heavy, slow, like the whole sky's sagging under the weight of something it doesn't want to speak on. I was halfway through a switchback when I saw him. He stood just beyond the white line on the right side of the road. A tall man in a Sunday suit, dark brown, perfectly pressed, like he'd just stepped out of church in 1963. His hands were folded in front of him, not hitchhiking, not waving, just resting. His posture was too straight, his smile too wide. His eyes never left mine, not when I passed him, not even when my headlights flashed across his face and lit up every detail like a spotlight. I slowed down for a second, instincts maybe, but I didn't stop, didn't even look in the rear view. A minute later, I shook it off. Just a local maybe, someone waiting on a ride. Weird, sure, but not impossible. People stand on these roads all the time. 10 minutes later I saw him again, same spot, or what looked like the same spot. He stood near a gravel pull-off now, just past a rusted mailbox and a no trespassing sign half swallowed by kudzu. Same suit, same grin, still looking right at me. I felt something in my gut tighten, like I'd swallowed a cold stone. This wasn't déjà vu. This was... Off I sped up. Another mile. Maybe less. A sharp bend that dropped into a stretch known as Coal Dust Hollow. Black trees on both sides, no houses, no lights, just the road and whatever decided to walk it. There he was, again. This time, in the middle of the road. Not blocking me, just standing there, still smiling, still watching. I veered left, missed him by inches. I swear he didn't flinch. Not a muscle moved. I glanced in the rear view. Nothing. No figure, no silhouette. Just the rain and the road fading into wet blackness. Now my heart was pounding. I reached for my phone but thought better of it. What would I say? That a man in a funeral suit kept appearing along a rural road like he'd taken a shortcut through hell. No one would answer anyway. Not out here. Not with this kind of signal. I drove, faster, but he kept showing up. Once more just past a washed-out guardrail, standing next to a road sign that hadn't had letters on it in 20 years, again near an old logging bridge where kids used to dare each other to jump. I passed him 5 times in total, always the same, still. Calm, that grin like he knew something I didn't. And each time, he was closer. The 5th time, I swear he was standing on the shoulder. His hand raised, not waving, but reaching. I didn't stop until I saw the lights of the marathon station on the edge of town. I pulled in under the canopy, heart still hammering, tires screeching against the wet concrete. I sat there a while, gripping the wheel like I was holding the whole truck together with my fingers. Inside, the clerk gave me a strange look when I came in soaked and pale. I bought a coffee and asked if anyone else had seen a man out walking. He just shook his head. Said nobody walked that road anymore. Not since the collapse near Widow's Curve. That was 20 years ago. Back home, I triple-locked the doors, drew the blinds, cut the lights. I didn't feel right. the kind of not right you can't explain, only feel in your chest like a low, pressing hum. I checked my porch camera before bed, just a habit. Nothing there. At 3:17 a.m. my phone buzzed, motion detected, front yard. I didn't want to check, but I did. He was there, standing just at the edge of the yard, feet planted in the soft grass, barely lit by the porch light. Same brown suit, dry as a bone despite the storm. Same smile, stretched wide, unnatural, too full of teeth. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. I watched him for 2 minutes before the feed cut out. No birds sang the next morning, not even the crows. I didn't tell anyone, didn't go outside, just sat in the kitchen drinking lukewarm coffee, jumping at the sound of the fridge motor kicking on. When I finally did check the yard, there were no footprints, no sign anyone had stood there, except the camera was turned slightly, like someone had reached up and adjusted it. I don't drive at night anymore. I don't take old roads. I don't attend funerals even when I should. And I never, ever answer the door after dark, because I know what I'll see if I do. That suit, that smile, and the eyes that haven't stopped watching since that night on Route 12. Story 2. Welcome to Chilton's Rest. I took the ranger job because I needed the silence. After a messy end to a long relationship and a string of late-night panic attacks in my one-bedroom apartment in Asheville, the idea of spending a season tucked away in the mountains sounded like a kind of salvation. Chilton's Rest wasn't on any modern maps, and when the park office mailed me the contract, it was a printed form with a handwritten note attached that said, simply, "No signal. Come prepared. Enjoy the quiet." And it was quiet. Chilton's Rest was the kind of forgotten place you only found if you meant to. No paved roads, no guided tours, just trail markers nailed to trees older than my great-grandfather, and a cabin that leaned slightly, like it had started sinking into the hillside decades ago and never bothered to stop. My job was simple: patrol the trails, check the overlook fences, replace damaged signage, and make notes in a logbook that hadn't seen fresh ink since 2003. I was alone out there except for the occasional squirrel and whatever was bold enough to skitter past the cabin porch after dark. I didn't mind the solitude. In fact, I welcomed it. The first time I saw the old man was on my third patrol. It was just past dawn, the kind of morning where mist hugged the ground and the trees whispered things you couldn't quite make out. I was hiking the South Overlook Trail when I spotted him. He stood by the wooden railing at the edge of the bluff, hands clasped behind his back, looking out like he was waiting for something to rise out of the valley. He didn't flinch when I greeted him, didn't even turn his head, just smiled, wide, warm. But there was something behind it, something that felt more like knowing than kindness. "Beautiful morning," I said. He nodded once, still smiling, then walked off toward the east bend where the trail looped back toward the ridge. I waited a minute, expecting to hear footfalls, maybe see the back of his coat disappear through the brush, but there was nothing, just mist and trees and silence. I didn't think much of it at the time. Old folks out here liked their space. But he kept coming back, every morning, same time, same place, always by the overlook, always with that smile. Never spoke a word, never acknowledged me beyond that single glance. And he always wore the same thing, a pale yellow flannel shirt tucked into dark jeans, the kind of clothes that had gone out of style long before I was born. I started to think of him as a fixture, just another piece of the trail, like the gnarled tree roots or the rusted fence post that never got replaced. 2 weeks in, I started doing photo documentation for the trail log. Part of the job, supposedly, but no one had bothered in years. I brought a cheap digital camera and snapped shots of landmarks, signs, even the overlook itself. That's when things got strange. Every photo of the overlook had him in it. Every single one. Even when I hadn't seen him there with my eyes, the photos showed him standing in the same exact spot, hands behind his back, that unreadable smile stretched across his face. It wasn't until the fourth or fifth photo that I noticed something else. He never changed position. Not his posture, not his expression, not even the fall of his flannel shirt. It was as if I'd taken the same picture over and over again, identical down to the leaf pattern on the ground. I tried to shake it off. The old man probably came at the same time every morning. Maybe I was just catching him during his routine, but the part of me that had spent too many nights lying awake in a silent apartment. I didn't buy it. I showed the photos to a clerk at the general store in the next town over when I went in for supplies, just made casual conversation. "Y'all got some real early risers around here," I said. "Met an old timer on the trail, friendly type, pale, yellow flannel. Do you know him?" The clerk, a woman in her late 60s with hands like a bark, went quiet. She looked at the photo, then at me. "That overlook's been empty since before I was born," she said. "No one hikes up there but rangers." She paused. "You said yellow flannel?" I nodded. She tapped the counter, then leaned in. "Have you ever heard of Enoch Chilton?" The name meant nothing to me. I shook my head. She lowered her voice like someone might be listening. "He was the one they named that patch after. Used to run a hunting camp up there in the 40s. A real strange man, kept to himself. Folks said he'd walk the ridges every morning at sunrise, looking for something he lost. Then one day, he just didn't come down. They searched the woods for a week, never found him. I didn't sleep well that night. The wind howled like it had something to say and couldn't form the words. My cabin creaked with every gust. Around 3 a.m. I thought I heard someone walking outside. Slow, deliberate steps. But when I opened the door, the woods were silent. Still, the air tasted like rust. The next morning, I hiked the trail again. This time, I brought my camera out early, snapping pictures before I even got near the overlook. Nothing, no old man, no figure in the trees, until I rounded the last bend. He was there, exactly where he always was. But something was different. The smile was gone. He turned to face me fully for the first time. His eyes were pale, almost white, and there was a wetness to his skin that didn't come from sweat or rain. He tilted his head like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I took a step forward, camera raised. My hand trembled. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just turned and walked behind the overlook toward the bend where the trail dropped off into thick brush. I followed, fast, but when I rounded the corner, there was nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign anyone had passed through. I stood there for a long time, long enough for the mist to start burning off and the sun to catch the top of the trees. When I turned back, my chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out of me and left there in the dirt. I reviewed the photos that night. The last one, the one I took when he turned, was wrong. He was there, sure, but I wasn't. I don't mean I was cut off by angle or hidden by brush. I mean I wasn't in the frame at all. It was as if I hadn't taken the photo. Just him, standing at the overlook, smiling, and in the bottom right corner, almost hidden by shadow, were faint lines carved into the wood of the railing. I zoomed in. They read, "Rest well, E. Chilton." I stayed 3 more weeks. Never saw him again. But every photo I took from then on had something wrong in it. A shadow where it shouldn't be. A tree that looked like it was leaning in to listen. Once, a faint figure in the distance, too far to see clearly, but standing in the exact same pose. Hands behind the back, smile on the face. I turned in my keys quietly and didn't bother asking for a recommendation. When I got home, I tried to print the photo, the last one with him in it. The file corrupted every time. The screen would freeze, or the printer would jam. Once, the entire computer shut down when I opened the folder. The cabin at Chilton's Rest is probably still there. The overlook too. And if you go early, when the mist is still thick and the trees haven't fully woken, you might see a man in a pale yellow shirt standing alone. He won't wave, he won't speak, but if you're not careful, he might smile. And maybe, just maybe, next time someone looks at a photo of the trail, you won't be in it either. Story 3. The Church with No Name. Some Sundays, when the world felt too tight around my chest, I'd drive. No destination, no music, just the wheels under me and the road spilling out ahead like a ribbon with no end. I always took the back ways, old coal roads, hollers with forgotten names, places where the map turned grey and the woods pressed close on both sides. There's a kind of hush out there. Not peace exactly, but something older, something to watch. It was on one of those Sundays that I found the church. It was mid-October, just after a cold snap. The leaves were dying loud, fiery reds, deep golds, wind scattered. I was coming down a winding gravel stretch between two hills when I saw it. No sign, no nameplate. Just a small white chapel tucked into a hollow where the trees bowed back like they were holding their breath. Clean white siding, a wooden cross out front, and a bell hanging above the door that swayed gently, even though there was no wind I could feel. I pulled over more out of habit than curiosity. The place looked freshly painted, but there wasn't a single car in sight. Not a lot, no path, just grass matted down like something had walked it often enough to make the ground remember. I figured maybe it was some old family chapel, one of those places that hangs on through generations even after the people move on. I stepped inside. The door didn't creak. It whispered open like it had been waiting for me. The air was cold, not from lack of heat, but in a way that clung to your skin, settled in your bones. The pews were filled. I don't know how I didn't notice until I was halfway down the aisle, but there were people sitting in every row. Men, women, some are older, some are hard to place. All dressed in Sunday clothes, clean, pressed like portraits out of a forgotten album. They weren't praying, they weren't moving, they were just smiling. Every head turned toward me in perfect silence. No cough, no shuffling of feet, no distant hum of a heater, just that wall of stillness and those eyes. The smiles weren't forced, but they weren't right either. Too calm, too empty. Like they'd let go of something vital and replaced it with the act of remembering how to smile. I felt the panic bloom in my chest before I even understood it. My throat dried up. I backed away. No one stood. No one reached. But their eyes followed me all the way to the door. I drove straight home, hands tight on the wheel the whole way. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't stop for gas even though the light came on just past the county line. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? That I walked into a church full of smiling strangers in the woods and felt like something had brushed my soul on the way out. They'd laugh, tell me to lay off the whiskey or get more sleep, but I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Not their faces exactly, but the feeling, that hush, that way they looked at me like I'd finally come home after a long time away. I woke up just after 3, drenched in sweat, swearing I'd heard a bell ringing in the distance. But outside, the world was still. A week passed. I kept my head down, worked longer shifts, tried to drown the memory in routine. By Saturday, I almost believed I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just some eccentric little congregation. Maybe they were harmless. Maybe it didn't matter. Then I found the flyer. It was in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just a trifold pamphlet tucked between a grocery circular and a water bill. The front was plain. Black text on cream paper. No images, no logo. It read, "Service tonight. You're always welcome back." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo, black and white, grainy, the same chapel tucked in the hollow. Only this time there was a figure standing in the doorway. I couldn't make out the face. It was blurred like the camera had moved, but the posture, it was mine. Same coat, same stance. Like the photo had been taken while I stood there a week ago. I dropped the flyer and stepped back like it had burned me. I didn't go that night. Of course I didn't. I triple locked my doors, drew every curtain, turned on all the lights. I even left the TV on for noise, though I couldn't tell you what channel. Around midnight, I heard the bell again, faint, too far for someone to have brought it to my street, too close to ignore. I checked the windows. Nothing. At some point I must have fallen asleep because I woke up to birdsong and sunlight and the hum of my fridge like nothing had ever happened. The flyer was gone from the floor. I searched the trash, the table, even the mailbox again. Nothing. But that night, I dreamed I was back there, in the chapel, standing at the front of the pews while the people watched with their endless, aching smiles. Only this time, I smiled back. It's been 3 months now. The chapel isn't on any satellite image I can find. I've driven the same route a dozen times. It's never there. Just trees and gravel, and the slow roll of Appalachia breathing in the fall. But every Sunday, around dusk, I hear the bell. Always once. Always distant. And last week, a new flyer showed up. This one wasn't in the mailbox. It was on my nightstand. I've been seeing people around town lately. Strangers, maybe. Maybe not. Just folks I don't recognize. At the diner, at the gas station, at the edge of the woods. All smiling. Not friendly smiles. Patient ones. Like they're waiting for me to come back. Story 4. Smile at the gas station. I was coming down Route 41 after a long day hauling furniture from Kentucky to a drop-off outside Roanoke. I do long-haul gigs when I can get them, pays better than most things in these parts, and I don't mind the silence. That night, the roads were dead. No lights except what my headlights cut through, just trees leaning in on either side, and the occasional mailbox that looked like it hadn't been checked since the Clinton administration. It was past midnight when I realized I was running low on gas. Should have filled up earlier, but the last station I passed looked shut for good, weeds growing up through the pumps. Then, just past a bend, a flicker of light caught my eye. A gas station, one of those little square ones, barely more than a shack with 2 pumps and a soda fridge inside. The sign didn't say a name, just GAS in faded red letters, half the bulbs out. I pulled in slow, crunching gravel under the tires. The pumps looked ancient, no credit slot, just old flip numbers and a single black hose. Inside, it was warmer than I expected. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Behind the counter was a bored-looking guy in a ball cap with Lions Club BBQ 2009 embroidered on it. He didn't say much, just nodded once and looked back down at whatever he was reading. And then I saw her. She was standing by the ice machine, tall and lean, wearing a grey windbreaker and jeans. Nothing strange about that. But she was still. Too still. Arms hanging at her sides, face turned straight toward me. She smiled as I walked past. One of those smiles that feels practiced, like someone trying to mimic something they've only ever seen. Wide, too wide. She didn't blink. I nodded politely, said, "Evening," out of habit. She didn't speak, just kept that smile. I grabbed a bottle of water and a pack of sunflower seeds and made my way to the register. When I glanced back, she was gone. I looked out the window, no car, no taillights, no movement, just my truck, the gravel lot, and that wind that sometimes carries a sound you're not sure you heard. I paid in cash, didn't ask questions, got back on the road. Maybe 6-7 miles later, I passed a stretch of woods where the trees thinned out near the ditch. That's where I saw her again. Same clothes, same height, same smile. She was standing inches from the white line on the shoulder, not hitchhiking, not waving, just standing, watching, grinning. I didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't look in the mirror. A few minutes later, I reached the only motel in that part of the county, a squat little building called Valley Pines, tucked back behind a bait shop and a church with boarded-up windows. I'd booked a room in advance. Room 4, first floor, end of the row. I parked, grabbed my duffel, and walked past the vending machines humming against the wall. That's when I saw her again, standing under the light at the far end of the building. Same grin, no movement. I turned fast and went straight into my room, locking the door behind me before I even dropped my bag. Heart pounding like I'd run a mile, I pressed my back to the door and listened. Nothing. I peeked through the blinds. She wasn't there. I told myself I was just tired. Maybe I'd seen someone similar and my mind was playing tricks. That's all. I turned off the light, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling. I tried to breathe slowly. The motel had that cheap, hollow silence, the kind that gets louder the longer it lasts. Then I heard it, a sound just outside the door, breathing, not heavy, not frantic, just soft, steady breathing like someone standing there, calm and waiting. And then, I swear to God, I heard it, the sound of someone smiling. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you hear it. That slight suction of lips parting across teeth, the shift of cheeks creasing just enough, like a slow grin forced into existence. I held my breath, didn't move, didn't even blink. The breathing stopped, the smile didn't. It was still there, I could feel it. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps, slow, fading down the concrete walkway. I didn't sleep that night. When morning finally came, I opened the door. No one was there. But on the doormat were sunflower seeds, the exact brand I'd bought. Half spilled, half neatly placed in the shape of a smile. I checked out early, told the clerk my plans had changed. He nodded like he'd heard that before. I took a different route home, avoided back roads, drove with the windows up, music loud, lights on even in daylight. But some nights, even now, I swear I catch glimpses. A tall figure near the edge of a lot, in the reflection of a storefront, always smiling. And when I turn to look, there's never anyone there. Story 5. The stranger who helped me move. When my grandfather died, nobody else in the family wanted the cabin. Too far out. Too much rot in the foundation. Too many stories about the woods. But I took it anyway. I needed space, quiet, something to rebuild after the divorce. I figured a cabin in eastern Kentucky, half swallowed by trees, was as good a place to start over as any. The drive out there felt longer than it should have. Roads narrowed down to gravel and then to nothing but tire grooves. My cell signal dropped out somewhere around Elk Ridge. That was fine with me. I pulled up just before sunset. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered, slouched like an old man holding his breath. Paint peeling from the boards, chimney cracked near the top, and the porch sagged to one side. Still, it felt familiar. I parked under the oak tree where Grandpa used to split wood, hauled the first few boxes inside and started airing the place out. Dust everywhere, smelled like old paper and damp pine. I found his tools still hanging in the shed, a jar of nails rusted shut, and a half-empty gas can beside the stump. The next morning, just as I was lifting the mattress frame through the doorway, I saw him, a man standing at the edge of the trees. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Tall, weathered face. Wore a faded orange hunting vest over a green flannel, mud-caked work boots, and jeans that sagged at the knees. He raised a hand, smiled wide. "Morning," he called. "Name's Roy. I used to help your granddad out sometimes, with the firewood and such." I set the frame down and walked over, wiping sweat from my brow. "You knew my grandfather?" He nodded. "Sure did. Good man. He always said someone'd come back to the place. Figured I'd stop by, see if you needed a hand." He didn't wait for an answer, just walked over, grabbed the other end of the frame and helped carry it in. Didn't grunt, didn't struggle, moved like he'd done it 100 times. I offered him a drink, but he waved it off. Said he had his own down by the creek. Said he'd be back tomorrow to help with the shed. And he was. Every day at the same time, around 9 in the morning, Roy would walk out of the trees like he'd been standing just out of sight. Never asked for money, never took anything. It just helped. Quiet, polite, strong as a damn ox. We didn't talk much, but I started to like having him around. I stopped feeling so alone. After about a week, I went into town for groceries and decided to ask around. Just curiosity, you know. I stopped by the sheriff's office, a small place with one desk, one coffee pot, and a bulletin board yellowed with time. I asked if they knew Roy. An older guy, hunting vest, said he helped my grandfather. Sheriff McClory looked up from his newspaper, eyes narrowing under bushy grey brows. "You say Roy?" "Yeah, a real friendly guy. Comes by most mornings." The sheriff sat back in his chair, the springs groaning. "You're sure about that?" "Pretty sure," I said, a little uneasy now. "Why?" He scratched the side of his neck. "Ain't nobody named Roy lived out near that cabin in years. The closest was Roy Tiller. Used to cut wood with your granddad sometimes back in the 70s and 80s. He paused. "Roy died in 89. Slipped on ice by Pritchard Hill. Broke his neck clean. Buried up at Millstone Cemetery." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "Is there another Roy around?" I asked. The sheriff shook his head. "Not that I've heard." I left without saying much more. Told myself it had to be a mistake. Different Roy. Just someone with a good memory and an old name. But that night, I started digging. In the attic, tucked inside an old trunk beneath yellowed blankets, I found a photo album. Leather-bound. Smelled like mold and tobacco. I flipped through page after page of faded pictures, birthdays, cookouts, hunting trips, faces I barely remembered. And then I found it. A picture of my grandfather standing out by the woodshed, smiling. Next to him was a man in a hunting vest and a green flannel shirt. Same vest, same shirt, same smile. Roy, only in the photo he looked exactly the same as he does now. Not younger, not older, the same. What made my hands go cold were the eyes. Every other person in the photo, my uncle, 2 cousins, even my grandfather, had their eyes scratched out, thin, careful gouges, like someone had taken a nail to them and worked slow. Roy's eyes were untouched, crystal clear, looking straight at the camera. The next morning, I didn't answer when he called out from the trees, didn't open the door when he knocked, didn't speak when he left a bundle of freshly cut firewood stacked neatly by the porch. That night, I locked every door, every window, sat in the living room with my old revolver across my lap and the lights off. Around 9, I heard footsteps, not heavy, just enough to let you know someone was there. Then the screen door creaked. I held my breath. A knock, not hard, just 2 soft taps. Then his voice. "Just thought you might need a hand with the chimney tomorrow. You always did have trouble with the damper." He said it like he'd known me my whole life. I didn't move, didn't speak. After a few minutes, the steps faded. The next morning, there was a bundle of kindling beside the porch. I called my sister, told her I wanted to sell the place. She said, "Already?" I didn't answer. That night, I heard the shed door creak open, then the sound of chopping. Slow, steady, like someone splitting wood at midnight. I didn't check. The next morning, the pile was bigger, neatly stacked. Axe resting against the stump. I took the revolver, the photo, and a change of clothes and drove straight to a motel an hour out. Paid for the week in cash. I never went back. But sometimes, especially in the colder months, I'll come home and find a bundle of wood near the back steps, neat, clean, still smelling of sap, and once, tucked under the top log, was a folded piece of paper, just one line written in careful, crooked handwriting. "You forgot to say goodbye." Story 6, Where the Trail Ends Smiling. I like hiking alone, not in a thrill-seeking way, nothing reckless or foolish. I just always found something honest in the silence. No phone, no clocks ticking on the wall, no conversations dragging into empty small talk. Just me, my boots, and the rhythm of breath on mountain air. Most of my trips were out west, where the trails are clean and marked and people nod to each other with practiced distance. But this time I wanted quiet in a different way. I chose the Appalachian backcountry, where the woods lean in close, and the silence doesn't feel made by absence, but by something listening. It was late September, cold enough at night for the wind to whistle through the pines, but warm enough to hike with just a jacket during the day. I parked at the base of a mostly forgotten trail near a place called Baird's Hollow. The ranger station said the path was unmaintained, but that was part of the appeal. I wanted to grow. I wanted solitude. They warned me the markers might be faded, but I had my compass, a detailed topo map, and a good sense of direction. The first day was steady climbing through ridgelines dotted with dying birch. I saw maybe 2 deer and a hawk that followed me for an hour like it was waiting on something to drop. Around mid-afternoon, I reached a switchback that curved hard left along a steep ledge. I stopped for water. That's when I saw him, standing maybe 30 yards off the trail, just inside the tree line. He wore a grey jacket that hung heavy over his shoulders like it was always wet. Big beard, wiry, skin like bark, and the way he smiled. It wasn't threatening, not directly, but it wasn't right either, lopsided, stretched too far, like he was trying to remember how to do it. I raised a hand and nodded. No response. Just stood there, that grin catching sunlight through the branches. I moved on. Another few miles, and I pitched camp near a bend in a shallow creek. By dusk, I'd convinced myself he was just another hiker, maybe a hermit type, maybe just someone passing through. But the feeling stuck. That something was wrong. Not in the way you know, but in the way your spine tells you before you do. That night, I heard footsteps. Not fast, not panicking, just pacing, circling the edge of my campsite, always just past the light of the fire. I couldn't see him, but I knew it was him. I could hear the pine needles shift under the boot. He never came closer, never said a word, just paced, like he was waiting for something in me to shift. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I packed up fast. My map had somehow torn in half down the middle, clean split like someone had cut it with a razor. My compass spun when I tried to orient. No magnetic disturbance I'd ever felt had done that before. I checked the trail markers and they were gone. I don't mean faded, I mean missing. Clean trees where paint had once been, like someone had taken the time to scrub the forest of direction. Still, I walked, had to. By the afternoon, I found myself back at the same switchback from the day before. Same ledge, same dead log on the side of the trail, and there he was again. Same man, same grin, no closer, no farther. Just there, watching, eyes locked on me like I was a moth. He was trying not to swat just yet. I called out this time, "Hey, do you need something?" Nothing. He smiled wider. I walked away faster than I should have. I turned my ankle slightly and had to limp the next half mile. I didn't look back. Every instinct screamed not to. I made camp early near a rock outcropping that overlooked a small gulch. Set no fire. Ate cold, jerky. I tried not to listen for steps, but they came anyway. Just after sunset, same pattern. Slow, even, circling. That night I dreamed I was lost in a hallway of trees. Every branch ended in a mirror. In each reflection, I wasn't me. Not quite. Same face, same clothes. But the eyes were wrong, and every version of me was smiling. I woke up sweating through my sleeping bag. My watch said 3:17 a.m. The forest was still dead. I kept moving at first light. By day 3, I couldn't tell if he was following me or leading me. The trail no longer made sense. I passed the same clearing 3 times, though I never doubled back. My food was running low. Water had to be filtered from slick pools that tasted like copper and earth. My breath got shorter on inclines. I started hearing things. Not words, just breath. Like someone exhaling just behind my ear when I paused. I'd spin around and the trees would shiver like they'd been caught in the act. Then, mid-afternoon, as the sun dipped just enough to turn the forest gold, I saw him again. He was standing in the middle of the trail. Closer this time, maybe 15 feet. In his hands he held something, a mirror. Not large, maybe the size of a plate. It looked old, metal rim bent in places, glass cracked along the top. He held it toward me, like an offering. I stopped, my legs wouldn't move. He didn't speak, just held that mirror out like it contained something important. And I looked. I wish I hadn't. My face was in the mirror, yes, but not mine, not really. The skin under the eyes sagged. Mouth curled into a grin I wasn't making. My eyes were wide, too wide, staring back with the kind of hunger I didn't recognize. And then the reflection smiled, before I did. I stumbled backward, fell, scraped my palms on shale. When I looked up, he was gone. The mirror lay face down in the dirt. I didn't pick it up. I just ran. Eventually, I found a deer trail. I followed it until I heard the sound of water again. Then a bridge, then the sound of tires on gravel. A road. A ranger found me 2 hours later, walking along the shoulder of the main access path. Said I looked like I'd seen something awful. I didn't argue. I never reported it. What would I say? That a man with a broken smile led me through my own unraveling in the woods. I never went back. But sometimes when I dream, I see that mirror again. And I'm smiling in it, even when I'm crying. Story 7. Smiles behind the motel glass. I'd been driving for 8 hours when the rain started, that thick, southern kind that turns road stripes into ghosts and makes the headlights feel useless. I was halfway between Charleston and Knoxville, headed back from a site inspection at a paper mill when the wipers started giving out. I needed rest. The kind of sleep that doesn't care about thread count or pillow mints, just a bed and 4 walls that didn't move. I pulled off at a faded green sign that just said, Lodging, 0.6 miles. No chain, no logo, just an arrow pointing off into the trees like it knew a secret. The place was called the Oak Haven Motor Inn, though there were no oaks left, and nothing about it felt much like heaven. It looked like the kind of roadside stop you'd find in a Polaroid from 1964. Long row of rooms with warped wooden doors, mustard-colored siding, and a flickering Coke machine humming under the only working light. I took room 6 without much thought. The clerk barely looked up, just handed me a key attached to one of those thick plastic fobs with a crack down the middle, said I was the first guest in a week, maybe more. Inside, the room smelled like a mix of bleach, damp carpet, and something sour tucked behind the air conditioner. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners. A framed painting of a cabin on a lake hung crooked over the bed, and the bathroom light buzzed when I flipped it on. Still, I was too tired to care. I brushed my teeth with the tap running hard, cold, metallic water, not quite clean, and leaned forward to spit. That's when I saw him. Behind me, in the mirror, not close, not looming, just standing in the far corner of the room, barely lit by the yellow bulb above the sink. A man in a pale shirt with dark stains near the collar. His head tilted slightly and his mouth stretched into a grin that didn't sit right. crooked like his jaw had been broken once and never healed properly. He didn't move, just watched. I turned around fast, heart thudding. The room was empty, not a sound but the old air unit rattling to life. I chalked it up to exhaustion, maybe even sleep deprivation hallucination. I locked the door. I checked it twice, turned off the lights, climbed into bed, and pulled the scratchy blanket up to my chest. I didn't fall asleep easily. The mirror kept catching my eye, even in the dark. I thought about throwing a towel over it. Should've. But I didn't. I woke up sometime around 3 a.m. to a noise, like someone breathing in the corner, not snoring, not coughing, just breathing, deep and slow, like they were trying not to be heard. I sat up, turned on the lamp. Nothing, but the mirror showed something else. Him again. Same place, same expression. Only this time his hand was lifted, palm open like he was pressing it against the inside of the glass. I stared for a long time. Then I threw the blanket over the mirror and went back to sleep with the TV on. The next morning, I nearly convinced myself it hadn't happened. The room looked normal in the daylight. The guy at the desk gave me a tired look when I asked if I could check out early. "You're in 6, he said, like it was a joke. I nodded. He just shook his head and said, "He's part of the room." I asked what he meant. He didn't answer, just turned back to the little black and white TV behind the counter. I left anyway, didn't even ask for a refund. The whole drive home, I felt, watched. I checked the rearview mirror more than once, expecting to see that grin, but nothing followed me until I got home. The first night back in my apartment, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror and felt something wrong. It wasn't immediate, not obvious, but I could feel it, like my reflection was slower to move, or maybe I was. I told myself it was nerves, a leftover shiver from that place. Next night, I went to brush my teeth. Different mirrors, different rooms, but I still saw him, standing behind me, grinning. I turned, empty as always. But the next morning, I noticed something worse. The mirror in my hallway, the one I'd had since college, wasn't the same. It was wider now. The corners curved. The frame had changed, subtly, but enough. I checked old photos just to be sure, and in them the mirror was different. Smaller, squared edges. I don't know how it got here, but I know what it is. It's the same mirror from room 6, and he's still in it, closer now. Some nights I see him smiling right over my shoulder, and sometimes I smile back. Story 8. The Laugh That Came Through Fog. We were halfway through West Virginia when the fog dropped. 1 minute the road was clear, the next it was swallowed whole, like the mountain had pulled a blanket over itself. The headlights just bounced back white. I slowed to a crawl, but it was useless. I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. My brother Kyle told me to pull over before I drove us into a ditch. I eased into a gravel turnout where a rotting picnic table leaned under the weight of vines. Hannah, his girlfriend, was quiet in the back seat, arms hugged tight like she was bracing for something. That's when we heard it. At first I thought it was the wind shifting through the trees, but no, it was laughter, soft, breathless, like someone trying to stifle it. It drifted in from the woods, then stopped. A beat later it came again, closer, higher pitched, almost playful. Kyle cursed under his breath. I twisted the key in the ignition. Nothing. Not even a click. The dash went black. My stomach dropped. I got out, checked the hood, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the latch. Everything looked fine. Battery cables are tight, nothing leaking, no reason for it to be dead. Then Hannah screamed. I spun around. Through the fog, just past the tree line, 3 shapes stood side by side, motionless, human, but wrong somehow. Too stiff, too patient. I couldn't make out their faces, couldn't see eyes, but their teeth caught the dim light. Wide grins, all three, stretched and waiting. We locked ourselves in the car and sat frozen, listening. The laughter started again, overlapping this time, circling us. But the figures never moved. Hours passed. I don't remember how. One moment it was midnight. The next, the fog peeled away like it had never been there. The car started on the first try. We drove until the sun came up without saying a word. At the next gas station, I saw the scratches, 3 long gouges down both sides of the car, deep enough to strip paint clean. None of us ever talked about it again, but sometimes when the fog is thick enough to erase the road, I swear I hear that laughter again, soft, breathless, too close. Story 9. Old Henry's smiling photograph. When my cousin Jared inherited the house, it felt less like good luck and more like a dare. The place had sat empty in the Kentucky hills since the 1950s, a 2-story wooden frame swallowed halfway by kudzu and dark trees. We went up one weekend to start clearing it out, me, Jared, and our friend Lucas. The air inside was heavy, stale with dust and old paper, and every step on the staircase made it feel like the house was wincing at our presence. In the attic, under moth-eaten quilts and broken lamps, we found a box of photographs, hundreds of them, black and white, curling at the edges. They showed birthdays, cookouts, church gatherings, ordinary family moments. But in every single one, always in the background, was the same man. A tall figure in a dark suit, slicked back hair, smiling wide. Not once looking at the camera, never changing with time, just there. We didn't recognize him. None of us did. We started calling him Old Henry, laughing about how he was some long-lost uncle who never left the party. That night we joked louder than we felt comfortable, the woods pressing in on the windows, the silence heavier than it should have been. The next morning, there was a photograph on the kitchen table, fresh, glossy. It showed us from the night before, me holding a beer, Jared mid-sentence, Lucas leaning back in his chair, but behind us, in the doorway, was the man. Same suit, same smile, closer than he'd ever been in the attic photos. We left that night, packed fast, didn't even lock the door. Jared swore he'd sell the place, but last I checked, it's still sitting there. A month later, I stopped by my mom's house. She'd been redecorating, putting up new frames. I froze when I saw one hanging above the couch. The photo from the cabin. Same angle, same scene. Only this time, it wasn't all 3 of us in the frame. It was just me. And behind me, old Henry was smiling. Closer, always closer,